Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Loreweek. Good morning, Cordoon, Maverick from Falkenstein, Crazy Norse, and the magnificent PL. What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Today, I want to talk to you about grass. Grass is No, I'm kidding. We have a bit of random news this week. I'm going to kind of switch through. And I want to talk about a couple of specific topics, as you can see up there. But I do want to talk first about the show, as I always start. Thing is, I have to start up front with this. So I'm just going to say this. The initial idea, here's what I want to do. I'm going to mention the idea right up front for the YouTube VODers. That's the idea for anybody watching the VOD. They can get the news right up front. I'm thinking about adding to my workload because it's an idea that I've had that might actually work. The basic premise would be immediately after finishing a stream of a given game, I would then basically not do the next stream block and then spend that time instead recording a video about it, which would form a rumination. That's the summary. Not sure what I think of the idea. Not exactly enthused. It will literally mean less streaming as a default. So that's a problem. I don't do reviews of Star Trek, no. However, I do push out videos of Star Trek every Monday and Tuesday. I don't generally review television or movies. I only review games. I think Sci-Fi Debris reviews Star Trek. It also gives me substantially less time to reflect. Although, that being said, here's the deal. I'll go ahead and talk about this a little bit more. So, I guess I'll just be real with you guys for a second. I've been trying to figure out ways to reduce my workload without losing out on a substantial amount of income, since I still don't actually make the amount of money that I would like to, in order to be able to be stable in my life and live the way I want to, and actually have a decent place and a studio and blah blah blah, all that fun stuff, right? So I've been trying to do better, basically, in addition to trying to make more money. I guess that's common with a lot of us, right? Go to sleep, Revan. God. Anyways, so I was like, all right, let's go ahead and toss out a poll, right? So what do you guys think about the idea of me not doing video game ruminations, since that would be an enormous reduction in my workload every year? The response, and I thank you for answering honestly, but the response was a full 20% of you said that you would stop supporting me financially. Now, obviously, that's not a linear figure, but even at an absolute minimum, that basically means that I would be losing about 20% of my income. That's a pretty big chop of income, which I really can't swing right now. So, we're not doing that. I had already committed internally to the idea that if I was going to do that, if I was going to chop the video game ruminations, I would let you guys know in advance, so that you guys could, see supporting me in advance. I didn't want to be like, and suddenly we're not doing it. No, I wanted to be upfront about it. But that is such a huge chop that is something that I can't swing. So, no biggie, sure, whatever. So, how do I arrive at that figure? It's actually very easy. All I have to do, Micromano, is presume a certain amount of income fluctuation based on people and variance of the 80-20 rule. That's all that is. So. Anyways, so here's the idea in a nutshell. I kind of already said it, why don't... but what it really means is there will actually be two types of ruminations. Because right now we have rumination analyses. Now, those are a little different, because those involve doing a little digging into the behind the scenes and discussing the how it was made and gameplay design and blah, blah, blah. But I could also do just a rumination. So you're probably thinking, what's the difference? So the mentality I tend to go into when it comes to a rumination is actually very simple to explain. How many of you have ever just finished watching an episode of a show that's concurrently coming out, or have ever finished watching a movie with a friend or a loved one or whatever, or have ever just finished playing a game, and you go to your buddies and you talk about it, and the stuff you retained, the stuff that's interesting to you, the stuff that you thought was worthy of discussion, is the stuff that you then discuss with them, right? Now, obviously, the whole point of a rumination is to be pre-recorded, aka an absence of discussion. However, that is the exact mentality that I have when walking into a rumination. What stuck with me that I think is worth talking about? This is one of the reasons why ruminations vary wildly in length, even the rumination analyses, because even when I look into behind the scenes and game design and blah 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 blah, there's still that same core mentality walks into it. What actually stuck with me that is worth talking about? So that's kind of something I've been debating doing. Like I said, that would mean a reduction in amount of streaming and an increase in amount of videos put out. Now, Shikor mentions the obvious idea there. We could actually switch that to the streamination format. And while I admittedly prefer that idea and like that idea, I have come to the conclusion that there is a significant enough portion of my audience that does not like the live discussion format, and therefore does not want that. I'm not sure about that, which leads me to my second question. If we were to do the game ruminations as streaminations, what would your feelings be on that? And please comment in the VOD or comment right now. And Shazam, right? That's... Now you're probably thinking, well, how is this increase in your workload? Well, the idea would be not to reduce the amount of rumination analyses. So the floodgate cycle would still be happening, because I can't cut the floodgate cycle because it's going to be a huge chop in income. So, an example of a streamination. We'll be doing one in probably about 40 minutes here. Streamination is literally just a streamed rumination. It is the exact same mentality and approach that goes into a rumination. I've still got my notes. I've still got things I want to discuss and talk about. It's just it is done live rather than pre-recorded. That's the only difference. And yes, the MLP streams have been exceptionally successful, and we've gotten to the point where we slowly weeded out most of the more negativity about that, and it's basically become our weekly positivity moment. So, I'm sorry, I'm laughing a bit because we had a completely impromptu FF7R discussion stream. Basically, that's your prototype for what I'm talking about, if you're wondering. So if you ever want to know what that would look like, there you go. Now, that included 2 other people, one of whom was impromptu and just kind of invited out of the blue. But, I sat down and with the things that I thought were worth talking about, and we talked about them. I suppose I should set up an official poll on this. How do I phrase those? Well, if we switch to streaminations, that wouldn't be less streaming. If we do ruminations, that would be less streaming. How do I phrase this question? Oh, thank you very, very much, Maze. Appreciate it as always, sir. Thank you. I'll go ahead and put that towards crosscode. So I have a pool up. I know I poll you guys all the time. I'm sorry. I put 3 answers on the poll. Here's the poll right there. Let's see here. I mean, that is a valid point, Magnificate. However, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, the ruminations aren't something you can really follow through on unless you already know the topic in question as well. That's kind of a unavoidable reality. Here we go. Voot. So, please vote on that, especially those of you in the VOD. We're watching this after the fact. I do want as much buy-in on this idea as possible. I'm sick of the accept cookies thing. Really, really sick of it. It's so friggin' stupid, too, because the only reason they're doing that is because they're... I don't want to get into that topic. Let's move on. Let's move on. I am the poll runner, yes. Would there be a chance for guests? Very, very unlikely. Astonishingly unlikely. I'm not going to say no, as in 0% chance, but it's closer to, let's say, 1% chance. So it would be on the table, but unlikely. Okay, so please get your votes in on that, and please give me your opinion on that. I will be leaving that going for a bit. We'll see what you guys on. You want to vote for the top 2? I don't think... No, is the answer. I mean, I guess it's technically possible to do a streamination and then do a recorded rumination by basically repeating everything I just said, but that seems incredibly unnecessary and redundant. It's because I'm confused. Why would I do that? Why do you keep calling them pools, Chavin? You want to downvote the bottom one. Okay. Just, gotcha. That makes more sense. Give us the reasoning behind each choice. I mean, that's a valid thing to do, Javin. So, oh, there we go. Thank you very, very much, Zachariah Jebediah. Appreciate the sub. And thank you very, very much, Optimus99. Much obliged and appreciate both of you. If either of you know where you'd like to put those for increasing priority in future streams, please let me know. Oh yeah, I should mention something. Some people have been asking about the... Bloodstain, you got it. The floodgates process. First of all, we don't start the floodgates till August. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Second of all... Yeah, no, one way or another, this is going to increase my workload, Dream Whisperer. 100% of these options are going to increase my workload. Except for the don't do a thing. So. Anyways, so Hazardous wants me to do both. There you go. There's the increased workload. Damn it, Shaman. Kind of, yes, Darth Tyrant. That is a little different because I had guests on. But that's the only difference, is I had the guest on. Digimon, you got it. So noted. That one's been moving up the list lately. Thank you again. I don't know if I could do a 10-minute discussion on anything. I mean, right now we've been streaming for longer than 10 minutes, and all I've done is ask you guys a question. Net positive, Imperial Star Destroyer. Despite what some people may think about me being excessively negative, they're wrong. It's a decent game, and I do actually recommend it. There's some asterisks attached to that, but I can't really tell you those right now. Honestly, Final Cloud, you say that as a joke, but I think that's literally true. Did I tell you guys that I actually had a Patreon patron who decided to unsubscribe from me on Patreon? And the reason they gave is the fact that I wasn't working enough. I forget the exact wording, but it was, you know, he is not doing enough content. So no, I think that there are literally people who really do think that I don't work hard enough, or enough in general. So... And in the interest of honesty and understanding, it's entirely possible that person only likes one aspect of my show. If all you care about is Deep Space Nine, then I only produce one video a week, right? And yeah, exactly, Magnificate. It's entirely possible he just wants the Deep Space Nine stuff. He's like, why is there only one video a week? God! You know, it doesn't matter that I actually produce 5 videos a week, as well as stream 7 days a week. That doesn't matter, because he's only interested in the one topic, right? This is one of several downsides of going wide, like I do with my show. It's okay. It's understandable. It's just... All joking aside, I do think there are people who think I need to work more than I do. And, I mean, I suppose if I didn't have to sleep, I probably would. Anywho, please vote on that. Let me know your thoughts. Javin said something. I was sitting here like there's something in my brain that hasn't been resolved yet, and that's Javin. Javin said something, and I want to address him. He said, why don't I give the reasoning behind all these? So, the idea of a post-game rumination... yeah, sure, hang on. Declar. There you go. Here's a link to the Voot. Ah, there we go. The idea... I'm trying to think how to phrase this. The idea in general is to try and bite-size the stream content into something that the YouTube crowd can watch and enjoy. That's generally the idea behind this entire thought process. Right now, there's a big dividing wall in between streaming and the pre-recorded stuff. Now, and I've been kind of picking at that wall bit by bit. The Streaminations are yet another step in removing that wall entirely. And I've already talked about the idea of completely doing Enterprise and the original series of Star Trek, which will be starting next year, in Streamination format. Yeah, the highlight reels is another thing that has been a way to try and make stream content available to the YouTube crowd. So the idea here is to try and add to that without killing myself. If the idea works sufficiently, one of the things I would like to do then is to remove the Video Game Friday Ruminations as previously indicated. Because, holy crap, that's just... We'll see how that goes, but it would depend on how people feel for this idea that we're pushing here, the post-stream game thing. I also have no idea how good the post-stream game would be. I have no idea. It's just whatever's in my head to talk about, so it's a little bit different of a format than otherwise. I'd probably have to start taking notes as I'm streaming a game of anything that catches my thoughts. You know, the exact same way I do when I'm doing a main rumination. Which I can do. It would be a different process. So we're not doing this for Grandia because I haven't started doing that already, but you get the idea. Anyways. Now, to split this up, what's the point of the pre-recorded thing? That's to appeal to people like Max Time who don't want to listen to the chat. That's the point of that. I have no idea the length of those. They would probably be shorter-ish than the Streaminations, if for no other reason than I wouldn't be talking with anybody. Just talking to a webcam. The point of the Streaminations would be the exact opposite, to have it be an actual discussion with people who have been present for the game that I was just playing. You know, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, you know, we have just finished playing blah, and now we are going to talk about it, right? So, thought process. Either way, we'll see where this goes. I am still trying to not have a complete nervous breakdown like apparently every other content creator has at least once in their life. So we're still working towards that. Theater's coming along nicely, to switch topics a little bit. We're definitely getting there on that one. I know I've said that several times. At this point, I have actually gotten a hold of everyone, and everyone has gotten back with me, and it's like, hey, woo, you know. So at this point, I have gotten a hold of everyone. We don't need to recast Kuja, thank God. In fact, Random finished another chapter, so that's another chapter of Kuja's work, which is done. Woo-hoo. Yeah, even Random has this. So as of right now, just to give a little bit of a call towards, obviously I still need Galtori's stuff. She's having some RL issues because of the current situation, so that's just unavoidable. Rax, he and I have talked. He's on that Bragwin. I haven't heard about her. I haven't heard from her about her things, but hopefully she'll have time to finish her line soonish. I still need Takoida stuff. He's got RL stuff he's been dealing with. I need Dream Whisperer stuff. He likes to pick away at it bit by bit, so he's been working on that. I got a hold of Ryokami. She's actually recovering right now from being sick. That's why she hasn't done anything. Savacom is almost done. She has, like, I think a grand total. In fact, I can give you an exact number if you give me a second here. Savacom has dramatic pause, loading slowly because Google Docs are loading slowly today. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. She has 4 lines left in the entire theater, and then she's done. Hat has been doing his thing. Obviously, he's got his own stuff on the side. Killing You has just been busy. I got a hold of Ruth. Hopefully, she'll be able to get some stuff done. And like I said, I got a hold of Random. And that's it. That's the list right there. That's what we're missing. So, woo, for the theater, getting closer and closer. I've put some additional thought into it, and I've looked at a couple of metrics on YouTube. I think we are going to go ahead with the idea of releasing 1 episode a week on Saturdays when it comes to the theater being released. So we're going to have 13 weeks of FF9 theater on the Saturdays. And hopefully people will enjoy that. Hopefully people will not be overly ridiculous dicks about the variance in mic quality and whatnot, because there's simply not a lot we can do about that. I mean, the options were, do we include as many people as possible, or do we have a smaller group of people do more roles? And I went with the former, because the whole point of this is to involve the community, right? So I'm still working on the credit sequence myself. I kind of want to finish a couple things before we get to that, but that's where I'm at on that one. Anyways, I think that's it for show news. Hey, Maverick, could you do... No, I'm kidding. We're done. Let's move on to actual random news, shall we? Whoops. By the way, one thing that has been posited as a suggestion, I don't know if it was serious or not, is the idea that I should, instead of taking Sunday afternoons off to get errands and work done, I should get my groceries delivered so I could just sit here and keep streaming, so I could get another 4 hours of work in every day, or every week. No. Moving on. So I got a bunch of little random news tidbits here. First of all, the PC Gaming Show has actually been announced. It's going to be almost entirely live. It will be on June 6th. We actually don't know much about it, specifics-wise, but that's happening on June 6th. I'm actually kind of looking forward to it. I haven't decided if we'll restream it or not, but at the very least, we will definitely cover that in whatever Loreweek that is, which actually, if you'll give me a second, I can tell you. That will be the very next day. So we will cover that on the 7th or the 14th, depending on how long it runs. Next up, and I suppose since I like to give links nowadays to be proper journalist, there's the link to that one. Speaking of links to stuff, so how many of you guys have heard of Tales of Christoria? It's a new Tales of game. That is mobile only. Anyways, that's getting launched in June as well. And they're doing beta tests soon and blah, blah, blah. It's a tale. I'll be kind of eyeballing this one. It'd be nice to see if we actually have a mobile game as opposed to a mobage game. But Final Fantasy XII got patched. This is actually a fun one. I'm going to link the... whoops. There we go. There we go. I'm going to link this one. So Final Fantasy XII on the PC specifically got patched. I should be clear. They have added the ability to reset your jobs. They have added the 3 sets of gambits, and they have removed de novo. Basically, they're patching it to add some of the console features onto the PC version. At some point, it'd be nice if they add the PC versions... I can't think of the word. Features. PC features onto the console, but, whatever. Because, holy crap. That's true. The more games that go mobile, the less work I'll have to do. We'll definitely run out of games, right? Right? Anyways. So yeah, here's hoping that is a continued trend from Square Enix, even though they actually broke the game when they did the patch. It's okay. There's actually already been, as of now, another patch to repair that, so that's nice. This is something... So I think this is on the list? Hang on. Let me pull up my document. My spreadsheet really quick here. It was at one point. It might have been fleeced and not re-added. Nope, it's right there. Ion Fury. It's still on the list. Ion Fury is coming out on consoles. We'll probably still be playing it on PC because it's an FPS. But that's cool. I'm down. I'm always down for good ports. So here's hoping. I think that's actually it for random news. There's a couple other tiny tidbits, but I don't even write those ones down. So, I want to talk about co-op. I actually lied. I have one last little thing before we talk about co-op. But it's kind of part of the co-op thing, and I like doing segues, so here we go. No, Mr. Red. There's no real reason to. Now, a mobage game, sure, but whatever. Yeah, Darth Tyron. Otherwise, we'd be playing it already, basically. 28. So Torchlight 3 is a game that's actually was announced a while ago. It was originally a mobile only, like mini expansion to Torchlight 2. Then it turned into a non-mobile only mini expansion. Then it turned into Torchlight 3. Shrug? I mean, Torchlight 1 was fun, and Torchlight 2 was great right up until the last dungeon. But I'm curious where they're going with Torchlight 3. The more interesting part, though, is the co-op side of things. So every account will have something called a fort. You can have the fort. No. The point of the fort is that you set it up and customize it, and it gives you cosmetic benefits, and it gives you gameplay benefits depending on what you want and how you set it up. That video shows a couple of brief things you can do. They've talked a little bit more about it. The big point is the account-based thing. In other words, you don't get the fort per character, you get the fort per account. And also whoever's currently hosting the match is the one whose fort is the one that's going to be live. So there's no layering with regards to that. This could be very cool. I tend to like heat mechanics. This could also be very terrible because this was originally a mobile game. But I wanted to segue into co-op. So some of you are probably expecting me to talk about Horizon Zero Dawn 2 here. However, the more I looked into Horizon Zero Dawn 2, the less I found anything concrete whatsoever. Like, there's several news sites saying, this is the news. No, it's not. No, it's pure rumor. Horizon Zero Dawn 2 hasn't even been confirmed yet. Never mind a release date. Never mind it being co-op. Never mind anything else. All of that is pure rumor. Which brings me to my point of co-op. Now, I actually already talked about this during I think it was the Grandia stream. But whatever, this is Loreweek. This is where we talk about this kind of thing. Horizon Zero Dawn 1 is coming to PC this summer, yes. We're actually waiting on playing through Horizon Zero Dawn for the stream until it comes out on PC, for obvious reasons. Anywho, I'm just going to go and give out a blanket statement here. In my opinion, good co-op always improves a game. I'd like to give my favorite example of that, Secret of Mana. You're probably thinking, wasn't Secret of Mana a good game? No, it's not. Think about it. Really think about it. Think about how glitchy and buggy and anti-melee and how problematic it is with regards to the magic and how distended that is and how much you have to know what you're doing and how much walkthrough-itis there is in the game. Think about Secret of Mana if you've never played it before and don't have a walkthrough right next to you and don't have a friend you're playing with. And all of a sudden that game becomes a lot worse. It was improved slightly. I've never even heard of that, J Meister. It's improved slightly with the remaster that came out, I guess, 2 years ago at this point. But it's still got its issues. However, I love playing Secret of Mana with a friend. Because, like it or not, Secret of Mana did actually have good co-op. It didn't have great co-op, but it did have full campaign co-op. 2 players playing together equally through the main campaign and story arc, equally having an influence and reaction on things. If one player gets to a thing, clicks. If another player gets to a thing, clicks. You can flip based on how you want to go through a dungeon, and this person can deal with this while you're trying to hit the switch, and this person can go over here, and it is actually good co-op. And that's kind of my point in a nutshell. Javan also makes an excellent point. It can make a coffee game into a good game. Because I actually enjoyed Dark Souls 2 for what it was. Because I was playing with you guys. And, I mean, it's Dark Souls 2. And if you remember, we also had hacker issues when we were playing through Dark Souls 2. Now, this leads me to my core point. I understand extremely well how hard it is to do proper co-op. Especially, it's not an easy thing, because you have to design the game basically with the idea of co-op in mind from word go. It's not really that easy to just patch in co-op. You can't really just be like, hey, right? Oh, we've decided to add co-op to such and such. That can work, but generally speaking, it doesn't. Also, proper co-op, or that is to say good co-op, needs to involve something that isn't arbitrary as hell. Like, say, Army of Two, to name an example. Because Army of Two, which I played very briefly with a friend, was just... There's also games that basically rely on co-op, and therefore actually make the game worse in the absence of playing with a friend. Actually, my personal favorite example of that is Federation Force on the 3DS, Metroid Prime Federation Force. Because that sucks. That mandates playing with a group. And if you're not playing with a group, even if you're not playing with a full group, it tends to flop. This is why I say good co-op is something that I always feel adds to a game. And I do stand by that, absolutely. It's kind of like, if I could give another opinion I've given that's been slightly controversial, I think the introduction of a good story improves any game.
Of course you follow me. They all do.
Excuse me, sneezing all over the place here. God, I don't know where that came from. Thank you very, very much, Jesse's mask. However, I cannot put that towards Legend of Dragoon. So you're going to have to put it towards something else, I'm afraid. Because Legend of Dragoon is locked in. No more donations towards it. Oh. Lore is allergic to bad co-op. Well, if we're to be blunt, let me talk about some ways in which co-op can be done badly. I already mentioned Army of Two. I already mentioned Federation Force, which is probably the worst example. Take your time, Jesse's Matches. Let me know. I'm going to mention a very beloved game that's probably going to make some people upset. But I think this is probably the most common example of co-op that I tend to see in video gaming. Star Fox 64. Now, for those of you sitting there going, or who've never done it, Star Fox 64 has a multiplayer mode where you fly around. It's split screen, and you fly around and you shoot at each other. That's it. It's not good. Plague Tale, you got it. Thank you again. Yes, I have, Zalo. Yeah, I was just saying, don't you remember? See, Ice Tray says that's not co-op. See, the problem is there are some people who would disagree with that sentence. Mostly game designers. There's actually a lot of game designers who, oh, you want to add multiplayer to your game? No problem. And what they add is something like that. This is one of the reasons why I keep emphasizing the words co-op rather than the words multiplayer. Because most of the time, and there are many games that do this, they add a multiplayer mode, and the multiplayer mode is garbage. It's even worse because in several ways it tends to be tacked on, like the Star Fox 64 example. Unlike, say, GoldenEye, where there was actual options and modes and you could do stuff with it, the Star Fox 64 thing, there's nothing there. It's just, well, there's nothing there, right? Now, what's funny about this, though, is good co-op absolutely can improve my impression of an otherwise lackluster game. Now, I already mentioned Secret of Mana. Someone already mentioned the other game that was mentioned, Dark Souls 2. Mass Effect 3 is probably my favorite example here, and I wanted to build up to this one. Because Mass Effect 3, I enjoyed the hell out of that co-op mode. And they kept adding to it. Remember that? Like, they kept patching it. Being like, here's some new things, here's some new modes, here's some new stuff you can unlock, and here's some new dudes. I had tons of fun playing what was effectively Swarm mode in Mass Effect 3. And yeah, the combat was actually legitimately fun. It was a separate... This is actually the weird thing, because it didn't have proper co-op campaign mode. There's a reason I keep distinguishing that, too. Co-op campaign is probably the single most rare, most unlikely to happen co-op mode. Secret of Mana has campaign co-op mode. Command & Conquer Red Alert 3 has campaign co-op mode. Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2 have campaign co-op mode. But most games have a co-op mode. Another excellent recent example of that would be Luigi's Mansion 3, which has an entire dungeon crawler section of the game, pseudo-procedurally generated, which is a co-op mode. And it's a good co-op mode, but it's still not campaign. Which gets me back to my core point of co-op and its importance and relevance in game. Because it's hard to do it well, but I still stand by my core point. Every time you do it well, it adds to the enjoyment of a game, at least for me. And I know I'm not alone in that. And yeah, I'm sorry, I keep skipping over this. The Borderlands games, that absolutely qualifies as proper campaign co-op mode. The Diablo games, Diablo 1, 2, and 3, all have proper campaign co-op mode. So, and yeah, you can play as Luigi, I guess. That doesn't quite count. We'll give that one a pass for the moment. But yeah, DOS 2 is probably one of my favorite examples because DOS 2 takes it a step even further. It's got proper co-op, it's got campaign co-op, and they've built in mechanics into the game to accommodate the fact that you have multiple players. In DOS 2, specifically I'm referring to the conversations. Like, you're talking to an NPC, and then you can disagree on what you should say to them, and there's like a duel-off depending on who wants to actually have the thing, or maybe you can just lose it on purpose, so they can pick their thing, and blah, 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 right? So I guess technically we're at the point of three separate degrees of variance when it comes to proper co-op. Now, Max Time says there are games which benefit from co-op, but not all of them. I challenge you to think of a game that cannot be improved with the addition of good, emphasis, co-op. Because I've played co-op Tetris, and that's fun. Trine. Someone mentioned Trine earlier, too. Trine was awesome. Mario Odyssey didn't really have co-op in a good way. I would agree with that. Mario Odyssey, Mario Galaxy 1, and Mario Galaxy 2 had bad co-op, in my opinion. Just RPGs, Divinity Original Sin 2. Diablo 2. Diablo 3. Adventure games? Let me think on that one. Oh, it was fun, Blue Wolf Alex. Especially when you're screwing up constantly because you're both thinking in different directions. Trying to think of an adventure game. Like, my thoughts is immediately going towards Zelda, if I'm being honest. And Zelda co-op is awesome, actually. I wish we had more of it. I can't think of another adventure game that I think... What's an adventure game? Help me out. That's such a generic category. Screen scrolling is one of those things you have to kind of solve whenever it comes to co-op. This kind of lies into the idea of proper co-op. Because if you're playing, oh, I don't know, Contra, you can kill the other person if you don't wait for them. Now, that's a badly designed game in many ways. Let's not talk about Contra right now. For those of you not aware of what I'm talking about, there's several vertical levels, and if you fall below the bottom of the screen, you just die instantly. So the screen follows whoever's on top. So, I guess I just don't agree, Max Time. At least not in the realm of the hypothetical. I mean, you could come up with specific examples of games where there's bad co-op and it sucks, and I'm with you on that. But I can't think of an example of a type of game where that would not work in terms of good co-op. Now, you keep saying horror games. Unfortunately, I can't speak to that. I can't even think of a horror game that I like off the top of my head, so... I got nothing there. I can think of games with horrifying elements that would be great with co-op. Half-Life 2, excuse me. Oh, Resident Evil 2 would be awesome with co-op. Especially if one's going through one campaign, the other's going through the other campaign. And, like, because of the fact that some of their interactions kind of coincide, and some of them have a few specific similar puzzles. Like, you could be doing this puzzle and help solve this puzzle for her, and she's doing this puzzle, solves this puzzle for him. Oh, that'd be amazing. I suppose that's fair, Lord Harrimont, but allow me to contradict that. Every game could use an example of a good live system. Every game can be improved with an example of good enemy design. Basically, I'm disagreeing with you. I do think, historically speaking, good co-op can and does add to the enjoyment of a game. It's like good story. My opinion. Thief. No, I could see Thief working. Take some work, I'll give you that. Take some real work. God. There are exceptions. I mean, there has to be exceptions because we've seen so many examples of games where there's co-op and it kind of sucks, right? Thank you, Iser Master. I'm glad someone likes that. Yeah, forced story. Now, that's actually an interesting comment. I can't name any games off the top of my head, so please forgive me. But I can think of several games that I kept pushing through otherwise lackluster games because I wanted to know where the story went. And then the story was lackluster and boring, and afterwards I just felt... What was the point of that? And this is why I can't even name those games, because they were so unmemorable that they don't really stick out for me, right? It's like, well, how did I deal with that? But I remember distinctly, I've gone through several games where I've pushed through, like, no, the story, I need to know what happens next. And I remember distinctly because the exact point in my life I stopped doing that was when I started going to college. And all of a sudden, I didn't have time in my life. And I was just like, what am I doing? Like, I can't remember the game. I want to say it was an RTS. And I was just in the middle of the RTS, bored out of my skull, sitting here playing it, and I was just like, why am I wasting my time on this? And I just quit the game entirely, never actually beat it. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Point being, how do I think a stealth game could have co-op? You're kidding, right? That writes itself. Okay. Your job is to be over there and to be the backup plan. I'm going to go over here. If I manage to get caught, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be as loud and noisy as possible, drawing attention over here so you can sneak in over there. Shazam. I mean, that's just one strategy that comes to mind immediately. There are tons of different options when it comes to co-op stealth. This also brings me to someone mentioned Hitman earlier. I would love co-op assassin game. Now Imperial Star Destroyer asks the key question, and this is actually something I mentioned earlier as well. Damn it, Ruth. That's true. That is my job now. If you did your job correctly, your partner will have to watch. I mean, if you make it work in advance, yeah. How do you do co-op racing game? Mario Kart on the GameCube. Anyways, so, shoot, I was in the middle of answering something. Scroll up. Development time. That is probably the biggest example, the biggest argument I could hear of for why you shouldn't even try with co-op when it comes to game design, and that is development time. So, let me give my personal favorite example of this, okay? Oblivion. Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion is, in my opinion, a very enjoyable game that I would enjoy the hell out of if I could play it with a friend. Yes, I know there's mods, let's not get into that. You get my point. This is something I've wanted since the day, since way back in the day. Unfortunately, I haven't played that max time, so I have to take your word on that. Damn it, Shaman. The question is, how much additional work and time and development would it take away from the game to add a feature that, by default, several people wouldn't be interested in? And this is kind of a key point here. As much as I love co-op, and I know I'm not alone on that, it is still a limited market. And so what you're doing is you're trying to improve your game by adding a feature that not all of your people are going to be interested in. That is, I think, the biggest argument for why you shouldn't try to do co-op in a game, unless it's something you really want to have. Or there's one other kind of caveat here. And this actually ties into a game that someone mentioned earlier, Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, of all things, which I actually recommend. It's a good game. Here's the thing, and I did a little looking into this specifically for this, because Captain Toad did not launch with co-op, but it later had co-op patched into it, and it's actually good co-op. Now that's unusual, and if you've been paying attention to this whole discussion, you'll know why. Because generally speaking, you have to design with co-op in mind to have good co-op, right? Otherwise it's just tacked on and it's stupid. And you already see where this is going, because it apparently, and like I said, I looked into this, they did actually design it with co-op in mind. When they were initially designing the game, they left flags and triggers, and they wrote the code in a way that co-op could be added onto it after the fact. Then, when it sold pretty well, they tacked it on and it worked. Shazam. That, I think, is the best possible answer to the time and development cost equation, because it doesn't take. I don't want to say it that way. It doesn't take as much in order to design your game with the possibility of co-op than it does to actually build co-op into it. But if you lay that work in advance, you'll have much less work to do later. I mean, hell, that's true in just about every aspect of real life, isn't it? right? If you prep, generally speaking, you have less work to do. It's one of the reasons I'm able to keep up the workload that I do in my real life. It's because I do a ridiculous amount of prep work constantly. There's a reason why the stream highlights videos go live the same day I finish a stream, right? Bingo, Linkensky. That's the only answer I could give to that, truthfully spoken. I will say I've noticed there's a big swing towards co-op in the last several years, especially from Nintendo, which I'm completely in favor of. Hopefully they'll get it into their heads that online co-op should be a thing nowadays too. Which brings me back to Luigi's Mansion 3. You can do the Guigi thing? No. Not unless they're sitting right next to you. Don't mistake me. I value couch co-op quite a bit. But I also value couch and online co-op. And if I could add one last thing to tie this back into the to the killing yourself in Contra concept. Boy, I say that 5 times fast. Having online co-op helps to solve that problem in a way. Because the camera doesn't always have to follow the same individual. Not necessarily. So if you have online co-op, then the camera can follow that person for him, and then follow this person for them, right? Just food for thought. If I could say one last thing about this, and then I'll stop yammering about co-op. Co-op is at least, I'd say, 30% of why I prefer World of Warcraft to Final Fantasy XIV, even now. One of my friends actually quit FF14 entirely because he could not play it co-op with us. It was just absolutely disinteresting to him for that, and I don't blame him. I'm sorry, I guess I should say 2 of my friends quit FF14 because of that reason. Sorry. I was thinking of one, and then I remembered the other one quit too. But we can play WoW together. It's food for thought. FF14 is not built with co-op in mind. FF14 is a single-player game that occasionally has a group event. So a lot of FF14 mandates being solo, and a lot of FF14 does not share quest progress, and does not share quest layering, and does not allow you to quest with a friend. As you're playing through about 90% of the content, you are playing alone. And you have to play alone. The way it ended up being, this is especially true in the whatever was before Shadowbringers, I can't think of the name of it. It would be, so here's my friend and here's me. And we're not even grouped, because if you're grouped, the game will not allow you to do certain sections. It will tell you, you're in a group. Go away. So you had to actually be not grouped. And we're doing the same quests, we're just not doing them together because we don't see each other and we can't group each other. Then we'd group, and then pug a dungeon. Then we'd leave group, and then we'd go back and do this. And that was just the format. And that drove us batty. It's one of the biggest reasons I quit FF14 until Shadowbringers came out. Because that just drove me absolutely insane. You know? And yeah, the quest content is the bulk of the content. We could do dungeons together, we could do raids together, and that's basically it. That's why I say FF14 you can't co-op, because you can't! Hell, that was still true in Shadowbringers, if you remember. When we were doing the premiere run, I kept having to leave group. You know, I had, like Valvedrix was there, Zero Hunter was there, Foley was there, I forget what their screen name is. And Rax was there, and it was like, hey, there's a dungeon, let's do the dungeon. Okay, get out of my group, I have to go quest. Tor does co-op, too. Or at least it did. I have no idea if it does anymore, but the last several times I played Tor prior to the stream, I played it with one other friend. The two of us basically two-manned our way through Tor like 8 times to see all the story. And that worked great. There were extremely few cutscenes or quests that had to be solo only. Although we did have to work very hard at it. Thank you very much, Gavel. Very much appreciate the sub, sir. I assume you mean VTMB 2, right? So yeah, Tor actually hit that one pretty well. Which brings me to another one that would be a great game 2. You got it. Awesome. Thank you. Well, another great game that would include co-op. KOTOR! And I know what you're thinking. How? Well, Tor. Although at this point, you know, KOTOR is such an old game, I don't think you could graft that onto it. But in a hypothetical rewriting reality situation, I think co-op would work very well in a game like KOTOR. Anyways, suppose I should move on from this topic and talk about Star Wars. Seamless segue. Oh, Dragon Age would work so well in co-op, in my opinion. I mean, it's already a party-based game. Who would the second player play as? Anyone else in the party. How would you play as Mass Effect co-op? Anyone else in the party. It works. It writes itself. Anyways, I need to get a timestamp. Oh god, we've been talking about that for a while. I apologize, guys. Did you know? That sounds like EVE Online to me, Javin. How would dialogue work? Tor. For those of you not aware of how dialogue works in Tor, yes, Grey Wolf, I saw that, sorry. And I actually reported that a couple weeks ago. The way it works is either, like, oh God, I forget the specifics now that I'm thinking about it. But basically, either you rotate or you roll. I'm pretty sure those are the two options. Please don't quote me on that. It has actually been several years since I played. But it's like you can roll a dice to decide whose dialogue option is picked, or you can go back and forth. I feel like there's also an option to just not pick and let the other person take it, but that's whatever. Because I did that several times with my friend, where I would just sit there and let him take the dialogue options. Anyways, let's talk about Star Wars. Let's talk about Star Wars. Anybody ever seen a show called Russian Dolls? That's a lot of no's. Me neither, by the way. I had to research this for this one. Because the woman who made and mainlined Russian Dolls is making a Star Wars show. Now, this is going to sound like a spoiler, but it isn't. Russian Dolls is a Groundhog Day television show. That's the show. There you go. There's the premise. And she is in charge of making a new Star Wars show. She's going to become a new showrunner for that. This is going to be live action. And that's it. That's basically all we know. Now you're thinking, why is this a full topic? Well, because I haven't seen Mandalorian Hazardous. No, this is a topic because I agree. Not about her or the Groundhog Day. I don't give a damn. I agree about the fact that they're pushing more and more towards television when it comes to Star Wars. And I'm sure you guys have noticed that trend in general. In fact, I've kind of reported on this already at this point. There has been a definite push towards more and more television and less movie focus. Yeah, we've got, let's see, we had Rebels, and we're continuing Clone Wars now. We had Mandalorian, we had, I can't think of what it's called, but it's that stupid anime show that I don't like. They've got the Rogue One show that's coming out. We've got the... Oh, God, I think there's like 2 others. I can't even think of at this point. Resistance is the crap one I was talking about. Yeah, Resistance, no thank you. Now, this is interesting for 2 really big reasons. First and foremost, from a construction perspective, television is, I've talked about this so many times, television is such a different medium than it used to be 20 years ago. It's one of the reasons why I almost feel outdated when I talk about the creation of television when doing my Star Trek stuff, because I'm talking about the creation of Star Trek from the 90s and the early aughts. Television as a design philosophy has changed drastically in the last 20 years for many reasons, not the least of which being because of Babylon 5. I'm actually dead serious about that one, by the way. Babylon 5 in many ways was an innovator for how television is designed these days. And I mean, I'm actually down. I do like what television has moved into. I do like this general direction. I do like the overall emphasis on it. And the fact that the industry has grown to the fact that it's actually reduced costs sufficient that it's no longer the big three. You remember the big three, right? If you wanted to get into television on any significant time or thing, by the way, hi Mike. What's up? If you want to get into wanted to get into television back in the day, you needed to walk up and approach the big three, and you were fighting amongst like 400 other people who all wanted to get their shows running, right? It's actually horrifying if you think about it, how it used to be. Nowadays, it's not actually all that cost inefficient is the way I want to phrase that, to get your show produced and put out there on Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. There's a reason why Netflix originals and Amazon originals have kind of exploded in the last 10 years. But I digress. So that's the first reason why I think this is a good move. The second reason, yeah, that's the joke. Hello, Netflix, you're greenlit. The second reason I think this is a good move, and I can't talk about the Star Wars movies because it's against my own rules to talk about them, but I can talk about Hollywood. Now, Hollywood actually refers to three separate entities when you use that word. To be clear about my terminology, when I'm saying Hollywood, I'm referring to the filmmaking industry of Hollywood, which is getting worse really quickly. And I don't mean in terms of quality. I'm not, oh, films were better back in the day. No, I mean in terms of its infrastructure and its finances. We have actually talked several times on this show before about how the ridiculous amounts of money, literally hundreds of millions of dollars, are cycled through effectively the same markets on a monthly basis. And how that is causing significant issues and problems with the general economy of the country here in the United States, which itself is having a feedback effect on the rest of the world's economy, because there's no such thing as an isolated economy anymore. And a lot of that money just gets cycled back into itself. And I don't want to get too much into high finance here, but the point is that this is a bad thing. And this is something that has been a bad thing for a while. And it's gotten to the point where several large Hollywood studios have basically been sitting in debt for years, despite making money, and have been continually getting bailouts and asking for more bailouts in order to keep the industry going. And yeah, as Ruth points out, this is something that's starting to become more publicly aware because of the recent pandemic, which has massively escalated and accelerated this problem that's already existed for years at this point. At least 10 years, probably longer. I would say it's probably existed for closer to about 25 years if you wanted me to put a number on it. That's just off the top of my head. Basically, yeah, Pyman, that is part of this problem. Now, I don't think the film industry needs to die in the strictest sense of the word. However, we might be at the point where we need to burn the house to get rid of the termites, you know? Like, we might have already reached that point. And that's not a pleasant thought, if we're being honest. I like movies. You know, I've been a film geek for a long time, since I was a kid, because of my mom. But yeah, Hollywood, and again, specifically the film industry, is just kind of... the center cannot hold, you know? And this is part of the reason why you're probably thinking, what does it have to do with Star Wars and television? Yes, Crazy Norse, that is absolutely true. Yeah, eventually thermodynamics is going to beat you. I think, well, okay, let me just go ahead and say this. For all that we make fun of Disney, you know, a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people dislike Disney's Star Wars. I'm sure a lot of people dislike Disney's Marvel. I don't know what Disney's doing with Fox. I don't care. But unfortunately or not, Disney is very forward-thinking, and they like to prepare long-term in advance. And you've noticed they've been pushing for television for a couple years at this point. Look at the MCU Phase 4. Just look at what's on that lineup. There's a couple movies there. There's like 4, I think, movies. And like 8 shows. Yeah. I think Disney has seen this coming quite a ways in advance. And they should. Anyone with any kind of a brain has seen this coming. Which, we'll see where this goes, I suppose. This is the big topic I wanted to talk about. You know, the new Star Wars show, who cares? No, I just wanted to talk about the move towards television in general. I have to admit, if by some miracle, 20 years ago I had taken over the world and was busy pushing the extant as a major brand, I would already be shuffling towards television away from movies right about now. And by right about now, I mean probably about 5 years ago. It's okay, I took over the world like 20 years ago. Nobody noticed. It's been going really bad. Don't worry. It's all going to work out, I swear. As soon as the spaceships show up. They're your friends. Don't resist. It'll make it worse. Trust me. Admittedly, at this point, if I could just add one last thing here. This whole thing reminds me of a boat in the middle of the ocean that's on fire. Pick your poison, right? Do you want to burn to death? Or do you want to drown to death? Or do you want to slowly dehydrate to death on a raft that you managed to get out? Have fun! That's kind of what it feels like right now with regards to visual media in general. Not video games. Video games is a separate industry, thank God. It's one of the reasons I'm glad Disney hasn't actually gone into video games yet. But... oh yeah, you can also freeze to death. That's true. You can freeze to death. Which would you prefer? No, I know they tried video games, and I'm really putting that in quotes because I gotta be completely honest with you guys. From my personal opinion, I let me take that back. From my professional opinion, what Disney did was they tried to deliberately sabotage their own game studio to prove that it wouldn't work, and then it didn't work, and then they chopped it off. My opinion. Look, COVID wasn't me, okay? Don't point your fingers at me on that one. I'm not a virus kind of guy. That is, I'm not actually joking. That is my professional opinion about the Disney gaming studio. I don't know why. It could have been something as pathetic and petty as there's one particular executive who didn't want to go into video games because video games are for kids, screw that mess, or whatever. And then... Funk. Yeah, my version of death is magical, not viral, okay, guys? I'm not unleashing the zombie plague. I am casting Undeath 7-6 on you. Disney made COVID. Well, I don't want to point fingers. No, I'm messing at this, but I'm messing. Deliberate choice of numbers. Hi, Mihawk. I'm sure to voot. Can I uplift the martial law in your country? I mean, I could. Thank you, Darth Tyrant. That's actually all I've got for the moment. That's all I have to talk about. This has actually been a longer Loreweek than I thought it would be. We've been talking for a full hour now. Holy moly. I had 2 topics. I'm going to go and chop off the local recording.